Hi, welcome to part 7 of my VNA series. This one is going to focus on the good old Smith chart. I have learned that many hams turn the Smith chart off, and I'm going to appeal to you to stop doing that. And the reasons I'll illustrate in a few minutes, but the Smith chart can actually be very powerful, and you don't have to be an engineer to take advantage of a Smith chart. Before we get started, a couple of things. I have learned that I am not allergic after all. I have been breathing mold and algae at work, and I am reacting to it. They are moving me to a new office, so hopefully here real soon I won't cough my way through these videos. But as far as this video goes, I'm going to ask one more time, please forgive the mispronunciations, the congestion, the hesitations in my voice and my video, because I'm trying not to cough in your ear. So I'm stopping the video and muting from time to time. One other thing, my videos are focused on the beginner in radio. If you're rather experienced, some of my content has to be boring because you already know about it. Some of you who've been in radio for a while are watching this video because of the Smith chart title. I'm going to ask you to give me 15 minutes to explain stuff you already know about. Please stick with us, as this is, I think, an important review. And by the end of the video, hopefully everybody watching will know more about the Smith chart than when they started. And by the way, don't miss the entire DCL-700 series playlist. There's a link to it in the comments below. I cover all sorts of stuff about the VNA, from basic operation to you name it. And I'm not done. There's more videos coming. We all know the Nano VNA is the coolest tool in the ham radio arsenal. At least I think it is. For $100, this thing does amazing stuff. But it's also a good teaching tool. And what I mean by that is it helps you teach yourself, especially when you have the Smith chart turned on. Hopefully by the end of this video, you will agree with me that you should always keep the Smith chart on. See, the Smith chart is showing you exactly what's causing the SWR to be high. You'll know, is it because my resistance of my antenna is too low or too high? Or is it because I have capacitive or inductive reactance? Or is it both? Once you know what it is, you start to already know what you got to do to change that and make things better. Now, the Smith chart will display resistance as well as capacitive and inductive reactance. If you don't know what those are, just hang in there. I'm going to go through that really quickly. It does not display impedance in the way that I'd like it to, but I'll kind of talk about that later. Don't worry about that right now. The Smith chart in a VNA is very automated. It does a lot of math and trig, which I guess trigonometry is math, but it does a lot of calculations in trigonometry for us that saves us a lot of time. And it displays those results on the screen. And again, it makes it a great shortcut. If you start paying attention to the Smith chart output, you start to understand what's wrong with your antenna. All right, so what is resistance? Resistance is just the degree to which a circuit or a part or whatever resists an electric current, causing dissipation in the form usually of heat. This is very important. Have you ever noticed that all resistors have a wattage rating? They can dissipate just so much heat. That's because resistors always oppose the flow of current by dissipation of energy. Now, Ohm's law is used to calculate all these things. Resistance is measured in ohms. I'm not going to go through the Ohm's law formula here. I do that in my video series DCL-100. For now, let's just agree that resistance is the opposition to current flow in such a way that the opposition dissipates energy. And again, resistance is a characteristic of DC or AC. It works on DC and AC exactly the same. Here's a simple circuit, DC circuit, by the way, battery, lamp. Let's assume there's virtually no resistance in the wires. We close the switch, and the tremendous resistance of the bulb causes the electrons going through it great resistance. The filament dissipates heat, so much heat that the filament heats up terribly and glows white hot, giving us the light we wanted in the first place. But it also heats the bulb up because, again, we're dissipating energy in the form of heat. Now, you know what happens. You apply the voltage, and guess what? Current flows. What are the dashed lines? Dashed lines are time marks. They're just showing you the current is a direct and instantaneous result of the applied voltage. It's very simple. If we increase the resistance in the circuit, what happens to the current? It goes down. AC circuit, when it comes to resistance, nothing changes. The current follows the voltage exactly. If we increase the resistance, current goes down. If we decrease the resistance a lot, current goes up. Now the Smith chart is actually a graph. So let's talk about graphing resistance, but we won't do it on the Smith chart yet. Let's grab a new number line. Since our radios, our coax, our antenna are all 50 ohms, let's make 50 ohms the center. On the left is a dead short, 0 ohms. On the right is an open circuit, infinite ohms. We'll put some grid lines between it or behind it so we know exactly where we are. Let's graph 25 ohms of resistance. That was pretty easy, wasn't it? Now let's add a second resistance for the current to flow through. That makes it really, how do you add resistances when they're in series like that? Well, it's easy. The current has to flow through both of them. So now you have 50 ohms of resistance. But try to notice something. The resistance depicted is a measurement of how far that dot is from zero. It's 50 ohms away from zero. That's going to be important in a few minutes. So just remember, what we're really doing is we're measuring our distance from zero. So what's reactance? Reactance is also measured in ohms, but it's the opposition to alternating current presented by an inductance, like a coil, or a capacitance, like a capacitor. A pure reactance absorbs energy from the circuit only to return that energy to the circuit. No power is dissipated, even though the current is impeded by the reactance. No energy is dissipated here. We do impose a phase shift between the applied voltage and resulting current. Reactance is kind of like a magic little property. It can change the phase relationship or the timing between the voltage and the current, and it does it without taking energy out of the circuit. This is a property that opposes AC current flow only. Reactance has essentially no bearing on a DC circuit. So, inductive reactance, a coil. Guess what happens? You'll find out that after you apply the voltage, the current will start lagging the voltage. Here, we are lagging by 90 degrees. What do I mean? Well, this is one cycle. One cycle is 360 degrees. So half a cycle is 180. So a quarter of a cycle is 90 degrees. We are starting up our current 90 degrees after the voltage was applied. Now to do this, we'd have to have no resistance and just inductive reactance, which is impossible. So you'll never get 90-degree phase shift, but you can get very, very close to it, like 89-point-something degree phase shift, if you have almost no resistance in the circuit. What about capacitive reactance? Well, here the current flows before the voltage is applied. Well, no, it doesn't. But let's just say you applied the voltage and the voltage started oscillating. After a few cycles, if you look closely, you'll find that the current is out ahead of the voltage. It takes a few cycles, but after a few cycles, the current starts to lead the voltage. That's one of the fun properties of capacitive reactance. I have not done a video on capacitive reactance. I've got some videos in the DCL-100 series on inductive reactance, and I'm going to add capacitance in the fall of 2025. But for right now, just remember this phase relationship. So what does reactance really do? Let's just sum this up. It opposes current flow just like resistance does. It causes current to lag voltage in an inductive circuit, and it does the opposite in a capacitive circuit. A phase shift between voltage and current happens. Reactance is a property that opposes AC current flow only. And reactance does not take energy away from the circuit. Oh, it does, but it returns it within the same cycle. So we say that it does not dissipate any energy at all. Can we graph reactance? Yes, we can, but how would we do that? Well, let's go back to the graph. Inductive reactance is thought of as a positive vector. So we go up. If we had 25 ohms of inductive reactance, we would put it up on the line as shown. Capacitive reactance goes the other way. So here we have 25 ohms of capacitive reactance. So what is impedance? Impedance is the total opposition to alternating current flow presented by the resistance in the circuit and the reactance in the circuit. It is measured in ohms. There will be a phase shift. It will be dependent on whatever degree there is reactance, whether it's inductive or capacitance. That phase shift is also determined by the ratio of resistance to reactance. We won't bother with doing the math in this video. Don't worry about that. Your VNA is going to do it for you anyway. So the VNA displays impedances as shown. Like one example would be 25.58 ohms of resistance with 32.94 ohms of capacitive reactance. I don't want to try to graph that, so let's do an example. Let's say your VNA told you your load, your antenna, looked like 50 ohms of resistance with 25 ohms of capacitive reactance. How would we graph that? Well, we say we are expressing 50 with a minus j of 25. Here's 50 ohms. We already knew about that. How do you graph the capacitance on that? Well, it's actually very easy. You just add it. So now you've graphed 50 plus a minus j of 25. Remember I said the total impedance, or the total opposition to current flow, is the distance of the dot to zero. So the length of the green arrow is what my impedance is, my total opposition to current flow in ohms. What is it? Well, it's not 50 plus 25, clearly. You math whizzes out there will say, wait a minute, there's a 50 ohm vector and a 25 ohm vector, and I'm going to use this formula, and I'm going to figure out the length of that green arrow, and guess what? It is 55.902 ohms. Okay, pretty cool. So you have 55.902 ohms of opposition to current flow. Now, again, you never have to do this math. Don't worry about it. If you did this, how do you know it's capacitive or inductive? Well, if you do the trigonometry between the 50 and the 25, you find out the angle between the 50 and the 55.902 is 26.57 degrees negative. That's the phase angle between here and here. Because it's a negative phase angle, you know you have a capacitive circuit. Anyway, we don't ever have to do this because the nano VNA does all this kind of stuff for us. Now, if you were to go back to the example I gave before and you did the math and the trig and everything, you'd find out that the 25.58 plus a minus j of 32.94 is an impedance of 41.706 ohms with a phase angle of 37.83 negative degrees. But again, we don't really deal with all that phase angle stuff that much. We don't care about it. If you wanted to do it, you could do that math. Okay, so now we're done with the intro. Now we're going to get down, and you don't necessarily have to absorb everything I just talked about, but if you got the basics, that's all that matters. So now let's take, and this should only take about 15 minutes, let's figure out the Smith chart. Boy, does that look complicated. The really cool thing about the Smith chart is it's not as complicated as it looks. The first thing you want to do, for now, ignore everything outside the black circle. We'll talk about that in a later video. In fact, you'll probably never use the stuff outside the black circle because your VNA is going to do all kinds of stuff for you. All you care about is what's inside the black circle. And I'm about to show you that what you're looking at is actually way simpler than you think it is. So let's graph 50 ohms on a Smith chart. 50 ohms of resistance, pure resistance. The very first thing you're going to notice is right in the middle where the 50 should be is a 1. Why is that? Well, the Smith chart was designed for universal use. If we are using a 450 ohm ladder line, we would set that 1 equal to 450. Because we're doing coax, we're going to set the 1 to a value of 50. How are we going to do that? We're going to multiply 50 times 1. In fact, all of these numbers, multiply every one of them times 50. So at 3, that would be 150. So that's 150 ohms. 4 would be 200 ohms. 0.5 would be 25 ohms. So this is your line. This line here is your resistance scale. And 1 equals 50. So the middle of it is now 50. So let's just label it. All right, so we know where the 50 is. So if we wanted to graph 50 ohms, we'd put a dot right under that arrow below 50, right on the 1.0. Okay, fine, that's 50 ohms resistance. You probably remember that the positive vector is inductive reactance. The red one is the negative vector, that's capacitive reactance. But the other thing you're noticing is notice how reactance and resistance, the 0 marks of all three, join together. That's 0 ohms everything. Wouldn't it be cool if this infinity and this infinity, infinite capacitive reactance, infinite inductive reactance, and infinite resistance, is there a way we can bring them together? Because in the SWR world, if any of those is infinite, your SWR is infinite. So they're all kind of like equal, right? Well, what was done with the Smith chart was exactly this. They folded those over so they all meet like the zeros meet. This is why all those lines are all curved and screwy looking. Here on the graph, on the rectangular graph, is the 50 ohm resistance line. Where these two lines meet is 50 ohms with no reactance. It's a perfect 50 ohm load. This is 50 ohms resistance with 50 ohms inductive reactance. This is 50 ohms resistance with 50 ohms capacitive reactance. What happens to that line when we fold everything over? This happens to it. There's your 50 ohm resistance line. That used to be a line, now it's a circle. Here's the 100 ohm. Oh, I mislabeled that. That's 150 ohms. 3 times 50 is 150. Sorry about that. Here's the 10 ohm line, because 0.2 times 50 is 10 ohms. They all meet over there on the right. So what about this line right here? This would be 25 ohms of inductive reactance. Well, 0.5 times 50 is 25. So this is your 25 ohm inductive reactance line. It actually stretches all the way to infinity. You just can't tell. And up here at the top, 1.0 times 50 is 50. So this is the 50 ohm inductive reactance line. How would we express 50 ohms resistance with a minus J of 25, meaning 25 ohms capacitive reactance? Well, we already know the point is somewhere on this circle, right? Well, right here what we have, if you look, is 0.5. That's the 0.5 line. 0.5 times 50 is 25. So this is the 25 ohm capacitive reactance line right here. And of course it goes all the way into there. So where does 50 ohm resistance and 25 ohms capacitive reactance meet? Well, they meet right there. So that's where the cursor would be on your VNA's Smith chart. Speaking of the VNA Smith chart, let's take a look at it now that we know a lot more about the Smith chart. Now we know what those circles are. Resistances of 15, 50, and 150 ohms. And we know what these are. Inductive reactance lines. And yeah, they look a little goofy because they stop, but they don't really stop. They actually go all the way. This one here goes all the way to here. I don't know why they chose to do that, probably for clarity. And of course, the capacitive lines are opposite. And again, if we were to graph this, how do we do it? Well, you already know the answer. It's right there. Let's go through a little bit of a video that I made earlier. Now, playing a video in a video on here is a skill I had to develop. And I really haven't developed it like I wanted to. Okay, I got that pretty close. So what do we have? We are on the 25 ohm capacitive reactance arc here. And see, that's what it says, minus 25 ohms. Well, close. This one is the 5.24 ohm circle. That circle is imaginary. It goes around about here. Because if this is 15, this would be about 5 right in here. So there's an arc here that it's on. They just didn't put it on there, of course. And let's see what else I did. This video is several days old. I don't exactly remember where I stopped it at. Okay, here we go. We are now on the 50 ohm. That's the 50 ohm capacitive reactance arc. And we're on the 8 ohm circle for resistance. So it comes up about here. Let's see where else I go. Now I'm right on the 15 ohm resistance arc, and I'm at 77 ohms capacitive because I'm between the 50 and the 100 capacitive arc. Oh, good, I stopped here. That's good. We're on the 100 ohm capacitive arc, as you can see, and we're at about 25 ohms resistance, which would be a circle at about here, so that would go about like this. So that circle must cross right about here. I'm going to move this around a bit. Find something I like. All right. Now we're at, let's see, we're just to the right of the 50 ohm circle at 50.51, and this is 921 milliohms of inductive reactance. See, it's positive, so we're slightly above the line. 921 milliohms, that's 0.921 ohms. So your SWR here would be probably 1.02 to 1, I would guess. It'd be a really good load. Or a really good match, I should say. Moving this up a bit. That made it stop. There I am on the 150 ohm or close to 150 ohm resistive circle with an inductive reactance of 187 ohms. Let's see if we can get right on an inductive line here. No, I want to go higher than that. There we go. So now we're at 25 ohms resistance. I guess that makes sense. That arc would come around about here. And of course, we're dead on the 100 ohm inductive reactance line. I hope that was worth 26 minutes of your time. Now again, when I get around to making DCL-706, I'll be giving you more hints and tricks on the menus in the VNA. To get into inductive reactance and coils and things, the DCL-100 playlist is where you want to go. But if you're interested in antennas and things like that, the entire DCL-400 series will probably be very interesting to you. I'm going to be doing some videos in DCL-100, probably the 110 to 112, on capacitive reactance this fall. For right now, I've got my hands full trying to finish up the Nano VNA series. Here's a quick look at my playlist. I haven't been showing this, and I think I should. As you can see, the various playlists have a lot of stuff in them. All of these videos are targeted toward the beginner in radio. I hope they help, and I hope they help you understand our hobby and radio in general. The DCL-90 series is on basic math. This is for the person who's not a math nut, but needs a little help understanding what they're doing. I don't go too far into the math. I try to just show you the basics that you need. So again, check out DCL-100's playlist. It really gets into inductive reactance a lot better. I've got my references up here, but you know, two great books that I should have included are any edition of the ARRL antenna book and the ARRL handbook. And you don't need the 2025 editions. Go on eBay and buy 10 or 20 or 25-year-old books, because the older books don't cover things like DMR or C4FM, but you know what? They cover all the basics really well. And on eBay, these books are so cheap, it's not even a waste of money to buy two at a time, which is what I do. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this is worth 28 minutes and 27 seconds of your time. I will try to get part 6 up on the menus as quick as I can. If you have things you're thinking about that you wish I would talk about or explain, please make a comment on any video. I will see it within a few days and get back to you on whether or not I can make a video on whatever the topic is. Thanks so much for watching. Again, I hope this is worth your time. And again, let me know. Positive and negative comments are always welcome. I really want to know how my stuff is impacting people. Thanks a bunch, and see you next time.